So this is an example of code for a switch statement. Basically, we just have this switch. So the switch is the start of the switch statement. And this n right here is either an integer or a character. So basically what this code is going to do is, let's say that so we have an n, so this n is either an integer or a character, so it could be either 1 or 2. So let's say that n is equal to 1. This is going to run case 1. Case 2 is the code that we're going to execute if n is equal to 2. And notice how we have these break statements after each case. And then kind of like a if statement, remember we have the trailing else in an if statement to catch anything that might not have been caught by your if else if statements. This default is kind of a similar sort of mechanism in the switch statement, in that the default is going to catch anything if someone enters something that doesn't meet any of your cases. So this switch statement can basically replace an if else if statement. The switch statements are often, the code is often easier to read and simpler than an if else if you have a menu. So also I want to point out that this default, kind of like the trailing else, the default is optional. Also these break statements are optional, but we're going to see what'll happen in a minute if you don't include them. There might be some cases where you don't want to include them, but they are optional. So this one we don't have a menu, but we're asking the user to enter A, B, or C. And then we read in and store whatever they entered to the variable choice. Then we have our switch statement, so switch, and then we're giving it the choice that the user entered, so we're giving it that variable name. And notice how this is, these are characters. So remember, a character is integer data type, so that's why we can use a character in this switch statement. So the switch statement has to be either an integer or a character. And so if the user enters A, this is going to see out, you entered A. If they enter B, it's going to print out, you entered B. If they enter C, it's going to print out, you entered C. Otherwise, it's going to go to the default and say, you did not enter A, B, or C. And so we can see some example output here. If they entered B, you entered B. If they entered F, you did not enter A, B, or C. So let's look at an example of a program where the breaks haven't been included in the switch statement. So with this program, we have a TV model. And so it says our TVs come in 3 models. So that's what we're going to tell the user. The 100, 200, and 300, which do you want? And so these 3 models have, so model 1 has 1 feature. Model 2 has 2 features, so Model 2 has all of the features of 1 plus another feature. And Model 3 has all of the features of 1 and 2 plus another feature. So we want to, depending on what model the user picks, we want to display the features of the different models. So for instance, Model 1 says that it has a remote control, so 100 has a remote control. 200 has a remote control and it has stereo sound. And the 300 model has remote control, stereo sound, and picture in a picture. So when the user enters 100, we just want it to print out that this has remote control. If they enter 300, we want it to print out all 3 features, right? So let's look at how this is working. So we have our cout, which model has the following features. And let's see, I ask the user for which model they want, so 100, 200, or 300. We're going to read in what they enter and store it to model num. And then we're going to print out that model has the following features. And notice how we have model num here. So that's going to be equal to either 100, 200, or 300. So if they had have entered 300, this is going to go to this case 300. It's going to print out picture in a picture. But this is where it gets a little bit different from the last switch statement we looked at. We don't have a break here. So what's going to happen is this is going to do what's called fall through behavior, and it's going to fall through all of the cases until it reaches a break or it reaches the end of the switch statement. So this is going to print out 200. It's also going to print out so it's going to print out if they enter 300, this is going to print out picture in a picture, stereo sound, remote control, and then it's going to break. If they enter 200, it's going to go to this case with the 200. It's going to print out stereo sound, and then it's going to fall through, and it's going to print out remote control, and then it's going to break. If they just enter 100, it's going to go to this case with the 100. It's going to print out remote control, and then it's going to break. If they don't enter any of those models, it's just going to go to the default and say you can only choose 100, 200, or 300. So basically, if they enter something that isn't a valid option, it's just going to tell them what the valid options are